What you're looking at is a 1990s electric bike. Not a restored one, not a museum piece, not something someone polished up and put on display. This is a forgotten electric bike, one that sat in a garage collecting dust for over 2 decades, while the rest of the world reinvented the wheel and called it an e-bike. And today, we're going to find out if it still works. Welcome to the Electric Barn Find, the channel where we find the electric bikes history forgot, bring them back to life, and take them out for a ride. I'm incredibly excited about this first video because what we have here isn't just an old bike, it's a piece of electric cycling history, and most people have absolutely no idea that e-bikes even existed back then. By the end of this video, we're going to learn exactly where this bike came from, what made it so special, and most importantly, whether we can get it running again after all these years. Let's go!
Before we get into this specific bike, I need to address something, because when most people hear vintage electric bike, they picture something from about 5 or 10 years ago. But here's the thing that absolutely blew my mind when I first started researching this topic. Electric bikes are not a new invention, not even close. The first patent for an electric bicycle was filed in 1895 by an inventor named Ogden Bolton Jr. That's over 130 years ago. 130 years when most people didn't even have electricity in their homes yet. But the era we're really interested in, the era that produced this bike right here, is the late 1980s and 1990s, because that's when everything changed. The rechargeable battery revolution meant that for the first time, you could make a practical electric bicycle that a normal person could actually own, charge at home, and ride to work. Companies started popping up everywhere. In Japan, Yamaha launched their famous Pass system in 1993. In the US, you had brands like EV Warrior and Zap Electric. In Europe, small manufacturers were experimenting with lead-acid battery systems bolted on to classic bicycle frames. And then, almost as suddenly as it started, most of them disappeared. The technology wasn't quite ready. Batteries were heavy, range was limited, charging took forever. And without the infrastructure and awareness we have today, these bikes mostly faded into garages, storage units, and eventually, if they were lucky, barn finds like this one. Which is exactly why I started this channel, because these machines deserve to be remembered. And more than that, they deserve to be ridden.
So, how did this particular vintage electric bike end up in front of us today? The story actually starts with an online listing. If you know where to look, and trust me, we're going to be doing a lot of this on this channel, you can find these old e-bikes scattered across classified ad sites, estate sale listings, and auction websites. This one came up on a local listing. The description was about 3 words long. Old electric bike, untested, collection only. Now, untested in the world of vintage electric bikes is both the most exciting and most terrifying word you can read. It means one of 2 things. Either the seller has no idea if it works, or they know it doesn't work and they're being diplomatic about it. But here's what I've learned, and what this channel is going to prove over and over again. Untested almost never means unfixable. I went to collect it from a semi-detached house in a quiet suburb. The owner, a man in his 70s, had kept it in his garage since he bought it secondhand sometime around 2001. He'd ridden it perhaps a dozen times, the battery had died, and he'd never gotten around to sorting it out. 20 years in a garage. Think about that for a second. This bike has been sitting there since the year Friends was still on TV, and people were just figuring out what Google was. He was genuinely delighted that someone wanted it. As I loaded it into the car, he said, and I love this, he said, "I always thought electric bikes were going to be the future. Funny how it took this long." He wasn't wrong. He was just early. So that's the find, a 1990s era vintage electric bike, lead-acid battery, unknown condition, bought for the price of a decent takeaway meal. Let's take a proper look at what we've actually got.
Right, let's do a proper first assessment of this vintage electric bike. I want to walk through everything we can see before we even think about connecting any power. Because this is one of the most important lessons in vintage e-bike restoration. You look first, you understand what you have. Then you act. Starting with the frame. First thing I notice, it's a step-through design, which was incredibly common on early electric bikes. The reason? Weight distribution. These bikes were heavy. Lead-acid batteries alone could weigh 15 to 20 kilograms. A step-through frame made it easier to mount and dismount. The frame itself looks solid. There's surface rust in a few places, around the bottom bracket and near the rear dropout, but nothing structural, nothing that would stop this bike from being ridden. Now the motor. This is where it gets really interesting. The motor on this bike is a front hub motor, meaning it's built directly into the front wheel hub. You can see the slightly wider than normal hub, and if you look carefully, you can actually see the wire running up the fork to the handlebar controls. Front hub motors were the dominant design in the 1990s. They're simpler to manufacture, easier to fit to existing bike frames, and they give a distinctive pulled-forward riding sensation that feels completely different from modern mid-drive or rear hub systems.
The battery. Now this is where things get complicated. What we've got here is a lead-acid battery system. It's mounted in a large box that sits over the rear rack. It's essentially the size and weight of a car battery, maybe 2 car batteries. And here's the honest truth about lead-acid batteries that were last charged 20-odd years ago. They are almost certainly dead. Lead-acid batteries have a relatively short cycle life, and if they've been sitting discharged for years, which this one clearly has, the plates inside will have sulfated. That's a chemical degradation that in most cases is irreversible. But I said most cases, not all, and we're going to test it anyway. The controls. The handlebar controls are surprisingly intact. There's a twist grip throttle on the right side. No pedal assist on this one, it's pure throttle control, which is actually how most early electric bikes were designed. There's a simple on-off switch, a charge indicator with 4 LEDs, 3 of which appear to be dead, and a basic speedometer. No LCD display, no Bluetooth, no app connectivity. This is as analog as electric bikes get, and honestly, there's something incredibly charming about that. And finally, the drivetrain. Standard single-speed drivetrain, steel chain, rusty but intact. Crankset looks original. The tires are completely flat and the rubber has dried and cracked. They'll need replacing before we ride. Overall assessment? This vintage electric bike is in better shape than I honestly expected. The frame is good, the motor is potentially functional, the controls are intact, the battery is the question mark, and that's what we're going to focus on next.
While we wait for the battery test results, I want to take a few minutes to talk about the history behind this exact type of vintage electric bike, because I think understanding where it came from makes the whole restoration feel more meaningful. Cast your mind back to the early 1990s. The world was changing fast. The Berlin Wall had just come down, the internet was being born, and in Japan, a company called Yamaha was about to do something that would quietly change cycling forever. In 1993, Yamaha launched the PASS, Power Assist System. It was the world's first commercially successful pedal assist electric bicycle. Not throttle only like our bike here, pedal assist. You pedal, it helps you. The harder you pedal, the more it assists. It was a revelation. Within a year, thousands of Japanese commuters were using them. Within 5 years, the Japanese e-bike market was the largest in the world. Meanwhile, in Europe and North America, manufacturers were taking a different approach. Rather than building bikes from scratch, many were converting existing bicycle frames, fitting motors, battery boxes, and control systems as add-ons. The bike we have here is almost certainly one of these conversions. The frame design, the front hub motor, the rear-mounted battery box, these are all hallmarks of a European or early North American e-bike conversion kit from the mid to late 1990s. Now, the technology at the time had some real limitations. Lead-acid batteries, like the one on our bike, were heavy, slow to charge, and had a range of maybe 15 to 25 kilometers on a good day. Compare that to modern e-bikes with lithium batteries, offering 80, 100, even 150 kilometers of range. But here's what I find fascinating, and what I think gets lost in the conversation about modern e-bikes. These early machines were pioneering. The people who bought them weren't buying the best technology available. They were buying into a vision of the future. They believed electric bikes were going to change how we get around. And they were right. They were just about 20 years early. By the early 2000s, lithium-ion batteries started becoming commercially viable. Suddenly, e-bikes could be lighter, faster, and go much further. The lead-acid era quietly ended. Bikes like ours were put in garages, sold for pennies, or simply thrown away, which is a tragedy, because these bikes aren't just old technology. They're the reason the modern e-bike industry exists.
Right. Time to find out if this vintage electric bike has anything left in it. We've done the visual assessment. We know what we're dealing with. Now it's time for the tests. We're going to do 3 things. First, we're going to test the battery voltage. Second, we're going to check the motor for continuity. And third, if things look promising, we're going to try to actually power it up. Test 1. The battery. I'm using a basic multimeter. You can pick one up for under 10 pounds, and I'm going to measure the voltage across the battery terminals. A healthy 24-volt lead-acid battery should read somewhere between 24 and 26 volts. Anything below 20 volts, and we're in trouble. Anything below 12 volts, and the battery is almost certainly beyond recovery. And the reading is 8.4 volts. Okay, that's not great. 8.4 volts on a 24-volt system. The battery is completely dead, sulfated beyond recovery, almost certainly, which is exactly what we expected, but it's still a little disappointing to see it confirmed. But here's the thing. A dead battery doesn't mean a dead bike, not even close. Modern lithium batteries are smaller, lighter, and more powerful than this lead-acid pack. Replacing it is actually an upgrade, not just a repair. Test 2. The motor. This is where I'm genuinely excited. Using the multimeter again, this time in resistance mode, I'm going to check the motor windings for continuity. A good motor will show a low, consistent resistance across all 3 phases. An open circuit, infinite resistance, means a broken winding. A short circuit means the windings have degraded. Phase 1, 2.3 ohms. Phase 2, 2.4 ohms. Phase 3, 2.3 ohms. That is genuinely almost perfect. Consistent resistance across all 3 phases. No open circuits, no shorts. This motor is alive. The motor survived 2 decades in a garage. I love this hobby. Test 3. The moment of truth. I've sourced a temporary 24-volt lithium battery pack just to see if we can get any response from the system. This isn't the permanent solution. That comes in the full restoration. But if we can get a single LED to light up, a single click from the motor, it tells us this vintage electric bike has a future. Connecting positive, connecting negative. Switching on. The charge indicator lights up. 2 LEDs. The speedometer needle twitches. And when I gently apply the throttle, the front wheel spins. This vintage electric bike works.
Now, to be completely clear, we are not doing a full ride test today. The tires are cracked, the battery is temporary, and the brakes need checking before we put this thing on a public road. But what we are going to do is a static test ride, right here in the space we have, just enough to feel what 30 years of electric cycling history feels like under your hands. The throttle response is surprisingly smooth. There's no jerkiness, no surge, just a gentle, progressive pull. For a motor that hasn't moved in over 20 years, it's incredibly refined. The front hub motor gives this really distinctive sensation. It's like the front wheel is being gently pulled forward rather than the rear wheel pushing you. It's quite different from any modern e-bike I've ridden, and honestly, I love it. Top speed on the temporary battery pack, with a flat tire no less, we're hitting about 12 kilometers per hour. With proper tires and a full-spec lithium replacement battery, I'd expect this motor to push somewhere between 25 and 30 kilometers per hour, which is exactly what it would have done when it was new. Which means this vintage electric bike, in its current condition, could actually be restored to something genuinely usable, not as a novelty, not as a display piece, as an actual, functional, rideable, vintage electric bike. I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't sure what we'd find when we started this video. A lot of these vintage e-bike barn finds turn out to be more corroded or more damaged than they first appear. But this one surprised me. This vintage electric bike has good bones. A working motor, solid frame, intact controls, and the spirit, I think you can feel it even through a screen. The spirit of something that was built to change how people travel. It just needs someone to believe in it again.
So, here's what's happening next with this vintage electric bike. We're doing a full restoration, and I mean full. We're not just swapping the battery and calling it done. We're going to bring this bike back to the absolute best version of itself. Step 1. New lithium battery pack. We're upgrading from the original 24-volt lead-acid system to a modern 36-volt lithium pack. Same voltage range as many modern e-bikes, massively lighter, and it'll drop straight into the existing battery box with a simple adapter. Step 2. Full drivetrain service. New chain, new tires. I'm going with period-appropriate balloon tires to keep the vintage aesthetic. New brake pads, and a thorough clean and lube of everything mechanical. Step 3. Motor deep clean and bearing replacement. The motor tested well, but after 20 years, the bearings will benefit from fresh grease and a thorough inspection. We want this bike to be reliable, not just functional. Step 4, and this is the one I'm most excited about, cosmetic restoration. We're keeping it vintage. No modern decals, no contemporary color scheme. We're going to strip back the paint, address the rust, and repaint it in a period-correct color. I'm thinking a deep forest green with amber decals, something that looks like it could have come out of a 1990s catalog. And Step 5, full test ride, a real one. Proper tires, full battery, out on the road, testing range, speed, and most importantly, pure vintage electric fun. And that's it for today's video, the very first episode of the Electric Barn Find. We found a 1990s vintage electric bike that had been sitting in a garage for over 20 years. We assessed it, tested it, powered it up, and confirmed that, against the odds, this incredible little machine still has life in it. The full vintage electric bike restoration series starts next week. We're going to document every single step, from the battery upgrade to the final test ride, and I promise you, by the end of it, this bike is going to be incredible. If you enjoyed this video, and if the idea of finding and restoring the electric bike's history forgot sounds like your kind of thing, hit subscribe and ring that bell. Every single week, we're going to be digging up more forgotten vintage e-bikes, bringing them back to life, and taking them out for a ride. And if you've got a vintage electric bike story of your own, something gathering dust in your garage, or a memory of an early e-bike you once owned, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. I'm the Electric Barn Find, and I'll see you in the next one.